Recent interview with Kellyanne Conway.
Melania and Mrs. Trump has made a decision that I respect enormously to stay in New York with her son. I wish I could be with my children that much. Everybody's making a sacrifice
And lately
here.
there's been a lot of media stories, and there's a cover of Us Weekly, Separate Lives, kind of questioning Melania Trump's decision and why she isn't taking a more public role as First Lady.
It's none of their business. She has plenty of a public role. The woman is beautiful inside and out, brilliant. She speaks 5 languages. I speak 1 because I'm American. I'm monolingual. And she speaks 5 languages. She's absolutely brilliant. She was a successful entrepreneur in her own right. And she is a loving and supportive wife and mother. And I have to say, a great friend and a great role model to many of us who work closely with the president and the first family. But she doesn't, she doesn't call attention to herself. And I think people can't stand that because it's not to type. They want to see, they want to poke, they want to dissect and wonder. I so admire the fact that Melania Trump, our first lady, is so comfortable in her own skin that she doesn't have to disprove anybody's negative stories or even positive stories. She's starting to hire her staff now. She has nothing to prove to anyone. But she represents this nation. She will do it with dignity and class and elegance and eloquence and the brilliance and the entrepreneurship. And really to have an immigrant as our first lady, somebody who waited and went through the proper channels, waited, I'm told, up to 10 years to get go through the proper channels, get everything approved. It's so gratifying to me to see that in 2017, frankly, an immigrant first lady. Who's covering that story? Why isn't she out there? Because she's not singing Kumbaya with the protesters and their signs, the privileged white kids coming out of the ivory tower saying, look at my sign. They have no idea what they're protesting. They're in this culture of sameness.
Erin McPike, Kellyanne Conway says, well, media reports about why we don't have a more public first lady. It's none of their business. Your take?
I think the coverage of Melania not being around is symptomatic of coverage of the entire Trump administration, that the press expects this to follow along similar lines to what they've seen in the past. It's sort of a tacit comparison to Michelle Obama, and Melania Trump is not Michelle Obama. We should cover Melania Trump as Melania Trump. Now, the other thing I would say is that don't we have enough to cover with the Trump administration already? There are stories coming at us left and right. There's no room for Melania Trump anyway.
Well, stories about a first lady always sells magazines, but I happen to agree with Kellyanne on this. Like, she is choosing to be a mom right now, and I think the press should just back off. We did see her, interestingly, for the first time since the inaugural weekend, on the plane with President Trump, greeting reporters as they came in before they flew down to Mar-a-Lago. Erin McPike, great to see you again. Still to come, I'm throwing a penalty flag on a Super Bowl headline that turned out to be totally wrong. Donald Trump thought he had a great opportunity to smack the New York Times for a Friday morning print story headline, China's president, stung by Taiwan calls, set to shun Trump. The piece saying that the two leaders hadn't spoken since November. The president fired up to Twitter. The failing New York Times does major fake news China story, saying Mr. Xi has not spoken to Mr. Trump since November 14th. We spoke at length yesterday. As the Times story was going to press on Thursday night, and the paper had asked for comment, Trump was speaking to China's president, but that wasn't announced until 11:04 p.m., after the paper's first edition deadline. Now, that's the only edition that made it to Washington because of a snowstorm in New York. So it wasn't fake at that particular moment. Hey, I didn't think the New England Patriots had a chance either when they were down 28-3 in the Super Bowl. Even Tom Brady couldn't pull off a comeback like that, right? But the hometown Boston Globe really seemed to lose faith with this early edition headline, a bitter end. For the Falcons, maybe, after Brady won the game in overtime. That is right up there with Dewey defeats Truman, and a lesson that sports, like politics, is kind of unpredictable. Well, that's it for this edition of Media Buzz. I'm Howard Kurtz. Thanks for watching. We hope you'll like our Facebook page. Check it out. We post a lot of original content there. You can talk back to us, email us about the media, mediabuzz@foxnews.com, mediabuzz@foxnews.com. Talk to me on Twitter @Howard Kurtz. And, if you're going to miss the show, you got something else to do on Sunday, DVR it and watch it later. And we've enjoyed having you along for the ride. It seems like there's so much Trump news now, it's hard to keep up. Back here next Sunday with the latest buzz.
Policy advisor Stephen Miller. Mr. Miller, I want to start with this North Korean test overnight. In 2013, Mr. Trump tweeted, "Where is the president? It is time for him to come on TV and show strength against the repeated threats from North Korea." Now that he's president, President Trump made a statement last night supporting Japan, standing behind Japan, but didn't mention North Korea. What in his statement is going to make North Korea step back from their course of action?
Good to be with you this morning, John, and thank you for having me here today. So you saw the president following through on exactly what he said he would do. He went out last night in front of the TV cameras and stood shoulder to shoulder with the Prime Minister of Japan and sent a message to the whole world that we stand with our allies. But we're going to be sending another signal very soon, and that signal is when we begin a great rebuilding of the armed forces of the United States. President Trump campaigned on this. President Trump has led the effort on this, and President Trump is going to go to Congress and ask them to invest in our military. So once again, we will have unquestioned military strength beyond anything anybody can imagine.
But that's going to take a little time. So no other show of strength in terms of
That show last night was a show of strength, saying that we stand with our ally. Having the two men appear on camera worldwide to all of planet Earth was a statement that will be understood very well by North Korea.
Let's move on to the president's executive order on immigration. The president has said both see you in court and also suggested there might be a new executive order. Which way is he going?
It's a great topic because there are so many things we can do. For one thing, we can take the case to the Supreme Court on the emergency stay. We can go back to the district court and we can have a hearing on the merits. We can go to the bank to have it heard on bank, or if we want to, we can also continue the appeal with the panel. Additionally, we're considering new and further executive actions that will enhance the security posture of the United States. I don't have any news today to make on it, but I think the point, John, is that the president has enormous powers, both delegated to him by Congress and under the Constitution, his Article 2 foreign affairs powers, to control the entry of aliens into our country, and he's going to use that authority to keep us safe.
Okay, we'll wait for news on that. When I talk to Republicans on the Hill, they wonder, what is the White House? What have you all learned from this experience with the executive order?
Well, I think that it's been an important reminder to all Americans that we have a judiciary that has taken far too much power and become, in many cases, a supreme branch of government. One unelected judge in Seattle cannot remake laws for the entire country. I mean, this is just crazy, John. The idea that you're going to have a judge in Seattle say that a foreign national living in Libya has an effective right to enter the United States is beyond anything we've ever seen before. The end result of this, though, is that our opponents, the media, and the whole world will soon see, as we begin to take further actions, that the powers of the president to protect our country are very substantial and will not be questioned.
Well, I guess let me step back. The question as I talk to Republicans on the Hill is what you're learning inside the White House about the way you do things. It's been pretty busy up there. Just stepping back, do you feel like you and your staff there that you're in control of events at the White House?
I think to say that we're in control would be a substantial understatement. The President of the United States has accomplished more in just a few weeks than many presidents accomplish in an entire administration. You've seen, for instance, profound regulatory reform. For every one new regulation, two must go. You've seen ethics reform to drain the swamp. You've seen efforts to bring back jobs with Intel and Ford and General Motors. You've seen action taken with an executive order to go after criminal cartels that have plagued our cities for years with no effective response. On issue after issue, we're taking forceful action to deliver on the president's campaign promises on a breathtaking scale.
One of the promises the president made recently on January 15th was about Obamacare. He said it's very much formulated down to the final strokes. We haven't put it in quite yet, but we're going to be doing it soon. That was almost a month ago. So when will we see his replacement for Obamacare?
Well, we're very far along on this, farther than many people realize. But the president, as he has said many times, you don't always want to show all of your cards. Obviously, we're dealing with a situation where you have some people in the other party that are being obstructionists for its own sake, slowing down cabinet nominees that will inevitably be confirmed for no particular reason, even if it means jeopardizing national security or public safety. But we have a plan that we're putting into motion now. Some elements of it you're already familiar with. We campaigned on, talking about things like health savings accounts. And we look forward to presenting more details to the American public very soon.
Let me ask you about immigration raids that have taken place to bring in people who've broken the law and criminals. Also, in those raids, there's been some people whose only breaking of the law is being here illegally. When the president was asked about this recently in an interview, he said about those who are here illegally, and that's the only law they've broken, they shouldn't be very worried. I do have a big heart. We're going to take care of everybody. Where you have great people here that have done a good job, they should feel far less worried. That was in an interview with ABC. So should people feel less worried still?
Well, is there a specific case that you're referring to?
No, I just mean in general. The president said that people should feel less worried.
I mean that when you're talking about particular deportation cases that you feel.
Well, there's been an uptick in activity, and
right,
so
because the cases that I'm familiar with, the reason why I asked that, have to do with removing criminal aliens, individuals who have criminal charges or convictions against them, and that's what's been taking place all across the country. And the effect of that is going to be saving many American lives, American property, and American safety.
But in terms of but they should, people who have not committed any crime other than being here illegally should still feel less worried. That still is an operation.
Look, it's not for me to tell people how to feel or how not to feel. We're in the process of removing criminal aliens from this country and enforcing our immigration laws and keeping the public safe. And the bottom line is this: in the calculation between open borders and saving American lives, it is the easiest choice we will ever have to make.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Stephen Miller, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back.
I'm on Kellyanne Conway. Congressman Chaffetz, Republican chair of the House Oversight Committee, and his Democratic counterpart, Elijah Cummings, have asked the head of the Office of Government Ethics to recommend disciplinary action against Conway for her comments promoting Ivanka Trump's products. Will the president accept that recommendation?
I think people are blowing this thing way out of proportion, if I'm being honest with you, George. I think that what you have is a situation where you had the President of the United States sticking up for a member of his family, and you had a counselor to the President who was making a lighthearted comment in defense of someone who'd been treated very unfairly. I think that the media has taken this to a level it does not merit. And I think anyone watching that interview would understand that it was a lighthearted comment made in defense of somebody who had been treated unfairly. And there really, I think, has been an undue amount of attention given to this issue, especially in light of everything that's happened in the world.
Well, it was
right
the
now.
Republican chair of the House Oversight Committee, Jason Chaffetz, who said she crossed the line in that statement. It wasn't just the media. That is the Republican chair of the House Oversight Committee. And on that point, because it gets to a deeper issue, Sean Spicer from the podium said the decision by Nordstrom to pull those products of Ivanka Trump was a direct attack on the president's policies. Sears and Kmart this week have decided to pull Mr. Trump's home furnishing lines from their websites. Is that a direct attack on the president's policies as well?
I'm not going to make a comment on that. I don't have any information on it. I do want to say that Sean Spicer, as always, is 100% correct, and that what he said is true and important, and I agree with it.
So then you are making a comment on it.
I'm not going to make any new comment. I'm going to stand by the White House press secretary and his comments, and I'm also going to call for sanity in discussing this issue. You had a case where somebody was treated unfairly, the president stuck up for a member of his family, and the White House counselor made a light-hearted, flippant comment that nobody would interpret as being what it's been cast as right now by you and the media and others. And I think that everybody has taken this to a degree and to a level it does not merit. And I really hope, George, we can move on to discussing things that the American people care about, like their jobs, like their wages, like their security, like the fact that we have a president who has done more in 3 weeks than most presidents have done in an entire administration.
You say that no one questioned. It was questioned by the Republican chair of the House Oversight Committee, Jason Chaffetz, so that is hardly no one. Let me move.
Susan Page is Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today. She's with us now from Washington. So, Susan, White House advisor Stephen Miller told John Dickerson the president projected strength after that missile test by North Korea. But Mr. Trump only spoke for a few seconds. He didn't mention North Korea by name. What did you make of that?
Well, he let the Japanese prime minister speak first. Then he said only 33 words, and those words did not include North Korea. He didn't do a couple things that we would expect a president to customarily do in a setting like that, condemning the test by North Korea, and also making it clear that we stand by our allies in the South Korea, who of course feel the most threatened of all by North Korea's provocative actions. So in this way, we don't know whether it was just a case where it was late at night, this is a new kind of thing for President Trump to do since he's newly in office, or whether this indicates something about the U.S. role, a more limited U.S. role in standing up to North Korea. One thing to remember, this is a completely predictable thing to have happened. North Korea often at times of transition in American politics does something provocative to see what kind of reaction they're going to get. And that's what we saw last night. One reason it was important to watch what President Trump did.
Yeah, we'll continue to watch if there's additional White House response. Meantime, the president pledged a court battle over this immigration ban, but it seems like he's exploring other pathways now. What happened, do you think, Susan?
Well, I think they put out this executive order and they didn't craft it with the kind of language that could avoid some of the judicial challenges they got. Some of the analysts believe that they could devise a ban that is more limited and specific in its scope, that could pass court tests. And there's a thought that that is a smarter way to go than appealing this particular court decision from the Ninth Circuit to a Supreme Court. There are some signs that if it went to the Supreme Court, they would divide 4-4. That's what they did on the last big immigration case that came to that. And that would mean that the Ninth Circuit court decision would stand. So some thought that maybe the smarter thing to do is to try again with a new executive order.
Well, in a separate interview, Susan, Stephen Miller asserted that there was widespread voter fraud in New Hampshire without citing any evidence. And I wonder, do you think this is becoming a policy position of the White House? What are the implications of that?
Well, this is something that President Trump continues to assert, but the administration can provide, as so far has provided, no evidence that there is widespread voter fraud. There was one case in Texas that got a lot of attention the other day, but in terms of the kind of voter fraud that he's talked about, 3 to 5 million people voting illegally, there is simply no evidence. The studies have been done by academics and by law enforcement agencies do not support this, and so we're left with a president and here one of his top aides asserting it in the absence of actual evidence.
Well, the president has encountered a number of institutional constraints in his first 3 weeks in office. What do you think he's learned so far from this battle with the judiciary and the challenges in getting his nominees confirmed?
You know, I think he's finding that being a business executive is different from being the president of the United States. You know, when you're a business executive, you can hire somebody for a job and they'll start this job. When you're a president of the United States, you've got to go through Senate confirmation for top aides. You also face constraints and challenges by the courts. You have a federal bureaucracy and foreign capitals that have power to constrain your actions. So I think we're seeing this president, who had had no experience in governmental